Yeah.
All right, guys. Looks like we're back. Sorry for those technical difficulties. Don't have time, nor am I in the mood to dick around with Skype. It's not our producer's fault. I don't believe it's my fault. It could be, but either way, we're back here. We're going old school, and hopefully we don't have any issues for the rest of the show. Getting back to the part before I cut off, just talking about Tony Gwynn. You're absolutely right. Just one of the most pure hitters in all of baseball. Obviously got in trouble with the good old dip, and too much of that over a course of your lifetime. It's not good, but either way, it's going to be a celebration more than a loss of his life, and you just got to think about how good of a hitter he was. He was probably the last guy that at least in my time that will probably get close to batting 400. So either way, sad day for baseball, but it's just something that'll carry on and got to move on. All right, getting into our starting pitchers tonight. Who you liking?
Well, I'm having a hard time today. It's not a whole lot to love. I think Julio Teheran's my number one guy, giving him the slight edge over Hamels tonight, just because he's at home. He's been pretty much unhittable. Doesn't have the same K potential, but I think that the Braves batters are a little bit better versus lefties than the Phillies are versus righties. So Teheran gets the edge for me. Also like Hamels, hate the fact they're facing each other, just because I like to get my win out of my top two guys. And if they're facing each other, obviously that's not going to happen. Multi-pitcher sites, I'd like to use them both. A little more playable there, I think, if you can afford them, just because you're not counting on getting three wins or two. So Teheran one, Hamels two, and then it's actually going to be Tyson Ross for me at number three. He's been much better on the road recently. He's a guy that can dominate a game. This Seattle team does not hit pitching, any pitching really very well. They will strike out a lot. Safeco Field, obviously a big ballpark. So I don't know if they're going to get him a win. That's always the problem with Ross. Chris Young has been pretty much unhittable this season. I have no idea how he's doing this. So it's possible they could get a few runs across off of Young to beat him tonight. But just with his price on most sites, especially FanDuel, he's awful cheap there. So those are my top three Bogs. Curious to hear who your number three guy is, assuming your top two are the same.
Well, yeah, I've obviously got Hamels and Tehran at the top. If you're making me choose one, I'm actually leaning Hamels tonight. The Braves, both of these offenses really are very hit or miss, very boomer bust. They tend to rely on the long ball from both sides, but it's hard to overlook what Hamels has been doing lately. He over his last three starts, he's got 26 Ks in 22 innings pitched. He's only given up one earned run, and he's only got 7 walks. Um, I'm leaning towards Hamels. I think that Tehran, while he's certainly capable of going out and pitching a great game himself, I think that Philly will be able to squeeze a run or two over the plate. And really, aside from Gaddis, all the really big hitters that tend to crush left-handed pitching on the Braves, like notably Justin Upton, is very, very cold right now. He's in a bit of a slump, a big-time slump, actually. Looking at the lineup, it's only a matter of time before they get Tommy La Stella back up in the two-hole, but you got B.J. Upton at the top of that lineup. It's that same poorly constructed lineup that we see night after night. I know Gaddis is batting fourth and Upton's fifth, but either way, I think that I'm going to give the edge to Hamels as my top option of the night. The Braves, they strike out versus righties, they strike out versus lefties. They just tend to hit lefties a little bit better. So don't really dive too deep into the fact that the Braves strike out versus right-handers a little bit more than lefties. On to Tehran. I do have him as my number two option. To be honest with you, it's going to be tough picking these guys on a site like FanDuel where the win is so important. But on an efficiency site, Tehran is one of the most efficient pitchers in all of baseball. In his last outing against these very same Phillies, he threw a complete game shutout. And while I don't perhaps expect him to rack up as many Ks as Hamels, he can still there's still plenty of Ks spread throughout that lineup. From guys like Howard and Don Brown. So I think that Tehran can certainly come out and pitch a big game. But like I said, I'm a little worried about these guys over on FanDuel because the win is so important over there, and this could easily be like a 1-1 nothing game, and you can easily see some of these bullpens getting the win in this game. My number three pitcher might surprise a few people here, might get a little people upset, but I'm going with Verlander as my number three option tonight. And I'll tell you why. Obviously, he's been very average to below average all season long. He's been awful of late. And you factor in that the Kansas City Royals don't strike out very much and have been hitting well themselves. And you could seemingly say, well, it's an easy fade for Verlander, but he's a big game type of pitcher. His velocity has come up, and he's actually pitched very well. I believe 6 of his last 8 starts versus the Royals have been quality starts. The one earlier this season, I believe it may have been opening day. Either way, he racked up 7 Ks, and he's the big game type of pitcher. The Royals are creeping up on Detroit coming up here in the standings. I'm liking Detroit big time tonight, and I'm going to be all over Verlander, especially at his very moderate price. He's just over 15K on our sponsor Draft Street, which is good enough for me. And even if he doesn't rack up as many Ks as he certainly can when he has all of his stuff working, I think he's going to pitch deep into this game and certainly limit the damage. So I'm leaning Verlander as my number 3. What are your thoughts on him?
I don't have too many thoughts on Verlander. As you know, I haven't been a fan of Verlander dating back to last year. I don't think he's the same pitcher with the same stuff. I don't like him. I don't trust him in any format tonight. I also certainly don't like the match with Kansas City. A very patient team that takes a lot of pitches, sees a lot of pitches, obviously doesn't strike out a whole lot. A lot of chippy hitters there. Yeah, I just can't get on Verlander tonight. If he was at home to a team, a big swing and miss team like a White Sox perhaps, or the Twins, could maybe see it a bit better. But yeah, I just can't buy into Justin Verlander thing. I hear everything you're saying. Obviously, respect the hell out of you, so I'm going to be interested to see how he pitches tonight. But I just can't get on it, buddy.
Yeah, it's definitely something where I would only play him in a GPP, but I think a lot of people at this point are just kind of waiting for him to turn around. And I've been saying all season long, he's not really interested in regular season stats. He's trying to stay healthy, getting into the postseason. He doesn't want to get hurt, but in a very marquee game, you never really say, okay, Central Division, Detroit versus Kansas City. But like I said, Kansas City's creeping up here, and I think Verlander's going to have the adrenaline going. I think, like I said, his velocity has been down, but over his past couple starts, he's been averaging 94 in his fastball. So, I'll be certainly interested to watch this game. I'm going to pretty much watch this entire game. But it's more of a gut feeling than anything. I think that Verlander is going to have a big game tonight, so keep that in mind. Going down from there, I do like Tyson Ross. Obviously run support is always a question for him, but on an efficiency site such as Draft Street, if you got the salary to bump up from a Verlander to the extra $1,500, I think Ross is in a great spot. Mariners are just awful offensively as well. I think it's going to be a very low-scoring game, and if the Padres can squeak by a couple runs or two, hopefully early in that game, it can give Ross a nice little cushion to really kind of settle down, not really have to worry about not giving up any runs because his team's not scoring. I think that Ross is definitely in play. Again, with him and Chris Young over on FanDuel, I'm a little concerned. But one guy that kind of stands out to me that I don't think too many people are on, and I actually have him as my number 4. 4A, I've got him and Ross pretty much tied. Tom Koehler for the Miami Marlins. This is a guy that hasn't been pitching well of late either, but tonight he gets the Cubs at home, who are one of the worst offenses in the league. They, for whatever reason, do not have the only guy I was afraid of in that lineup, Nate Shearholtz, in the lineup. They've got Luis Valbuena, who can strike out. Ruggiano, if he can get past Rizzo and Castro, look at the bottom of that order, Pepsi. You got Ryan Sweeney batting 5th, who I don't believe has hit a home run in probably 4 years. You got Junior Lake, who's hit or miss, similar to a Dom Brown but right-handed. You got Michael, John Baker, and then the pitcher. That's not too much to get scared about. And you also factor in that Koehler has been much better at home this season than on the road. He doesn't really tend to rack up the Ks at home, but for whatever reason, this Miami team loves playing at Marlins Park. Uh, who knows how many fans will be there? They probably don't have very many fans, but they love playing there. I expect him to get plenty of run support, and he's got a very cheap price. So, talk to me about Kohler. Are you on him at all?
Yeah, I like Kohler. I also like Jason Hamill pitching aside from him. So I think they're in both good spots again tonight. It's the same issue I'm having value pitcher-wise as I am in that Turner Field game where it's Hamill versus Tehran. Can't figure out who I like better, actually, between Hamill and Kohler because that Miami Marlins team is full of right-handed bats. Hamill's dominates right-handed bats when he's on. He can get the Ks up there. I like him, too. Speaking of Ryan Sweeney, he has no home runs this year. It's 6 home runs last year, believe it or not, and none in 2012. So certainly not a 5 bat to be worried
I like to
about.
know how many times the wind was blowing out in Wrigley.
When he hit 6, yeah, I expected to see 1. I laughed and I went back thinking I'd see 1 or 2. Somebody hit 6 last year, and he doesn't play very often. But you're right. I'm sure a few of those are wind dated for sure. Yeah, I think they're both a good spot tonight. I could see this game being 2-1, 3-2 for somebody. I just hate the fact these two are against each other because I think Hamill's in a good spot too. Your thoughts on Hamill versus Kohler?
Well, that one's a tricky one for me because Hamill is definitely a guy that can rack up the Ks. I was really high on Kohler, and then I saw the Marlins come out with that lineup. I knew Yelich wasn't going to be in there. A little curious about Baker batting second. Obviously, they called up Jake Marisnick, who's a capable prospect. But I think that they've still got enough protection behind Stanton. The 4, 5, 6 guys have some pop. I think he's going to get enough run support. Like I said, they do like hitting here, hitting out there in Marlins Park. And obviously, I'd be a little hesitant in my cash games, and he's not a huge Vegas favorite by any means. But just because the Marlins strike out doesn't mean they can't score. So I'm liking the Marlins. I would probably want to take the wait-and-see approach to see how this lineup pans out without Yelich because him at the top of that order was a big component in their success early in this season. But either way, I'm not going to try and wait around because Kohler's got an attractive price. His price is down, and he's a guy that can rack up Ks. We've seen it. He's got a live fastball, and it's up against this Cubs lineup without their one of their most not dangerous but tougher outs in Sherholtz. So I'm leaning towards Kohler, but I don't hate Hamill either way. I'm not really on him tonight because of mostly based on his price. Going down a bit, another two guys facing off, that have pretty moderate prices, but do have potential. Talk to me about Jake Odorizzi and Wei-Young Chen.
Yeah, see, I like Odorizzi. This kid's got the talent. He's certainly been up and down this season. He's been more up than down lately. He's got the K potential. It's just one of those things is whether he's on or not. And I don't love the matchup. This Orioles team can really hit. I know he's been great the last, it hasn't been great, I should say, Odorizzi. He's been kind of one of those guys like Kyle Gibson. He's kind of been good a couple starts, bad a start, good a couple starts, bad a start, that sort of thing. So inconsistent, I guess, is the word here. But I just don't trust Odorizzi enough. The talent's there. It's going to be inconsistent, I think, for the rest of the year, maybe a couple of years. He's only 24 years old. And this Oriole team, just for me, it's just too good a hitting team. I'm going to pass on him. A lot of guys I know are on him tonight, but I just can't get into him tonight. And Chen, through a shutout last game, he's got decent stuff. See, Chen's always a guy that I like to – a lot of teams look at him and will stack up right-handed bats on him and load up on him. He's one of those guys that never seems to pitch a gem very often and also never seems to get rocked. He's just one of those guys that's right in the middle, can't care for either way. I love it when guys stack against him because he never seems to get hammered. So another guy that I'm not really on, I don't mind a guy like Zobrist or Longoria against Chen, but overall I don't see him getting beat up. I don't see him doing enough to warrant being owned either. So I'm off both those guys really. I'd rather go after a Ryu tonight, who I know is a little more expensive, even though the Rockies are hitting well. I think he's in a decent spot, or I maybe even roll the dice on a Drew Pomeranz depending on the price, and even Chris Young. These guys have pitched well this season. Chris Young, I don't know how he's doing it, but he's not being hit. And that Padres team I know is awful. And Pomeranz has been pretty solid. Oakland should get him a win over Colby Lewis. Those are two guys I'd be looking at on multi-pitcher sites or as a GPP play over either player in the Trop there tonight. Are you on either of those guys in the Trop tonight?
Well, it's tough because, kind of looking at the Baltimore roster, they've struggled when they go down to Tampa Bay over the last few years. You also have Odorizzi, who's a very high strikeout guy. It would be more of a contrarian GPP play for me. it's really I can't really tell who, either guy who's going to get the win because Tampa Bay has been awful, but they've been striking out a little bit less of late. So it's a tough one for me. There are a couple of guys from either team that might be targeting, and I think I'm going to be off of it. But it's hard to ignore some of these guys' prices across the industry, and definitely the potential is there. So I would caution only against using these guys in a cash game, or I'm sorry, in a GPP and not your cash games because you're right, they can't be trusted. And then while Wei Chen, he's serviceable. You're absolutely right when you say he very rarely comes out and tosses a gem. A couple guys in the chat were concerned about the weather out there in Atlanta, and I'm not. I just want to go and point that out. I was obviously my Angels were out there over the weekend, and the weather was like that every single day. I don't think a speck of rain dropped. There was obviously some clouds moving in and out, but nothing that really seemed like it was going to affect the game. So just based on me watching those games out there all weekend long, the weather was the same, and I don't expect anything to a change. Obviously, monitor that because things can obviously change, at the drop of a hat. And I believe our weatherman will have an update here if it's not already out, posted in the forums. But I just wanted to bring that up real quick for those of you concerned about the weather. All right, let's move on to catcher. Who do we like in a backstop tonight?
It's awful hard not to like Victor Martinez. I mean, this guy has been absolutely unbelievable. I think the most impressive thing for me are two things. The fact that his power is back like it was from a few years ago when he's crushing baseballs. And I mean, in some of these games, I've seen a lot of Victor Martinez over the last couple of weeks alone because I've owned him quite a bit. He's just missing home runs. I'm talking about 3 or 4 feet foul balls. He's crushed a couple on the warning track. Hit one on the warning track last night, too. This guy's all over it. That being the number one thing, his power being back. Number two, the fact that he's crushing left-handed pitchers again. That kind of faded away after his injury. I figured he's more of an average, kind of a 12-homer guy from the left side of the plate only, but he's hitting left-handed pitching again. He's hitting right-handed with authority. Definitely the number one play tonight. Not going to be cheap, and obviously not available to catch on every site, but for those he is, I love Vimar tonight. A couple guys, too, that I think are underpriced in good spots tonight. Yadi Molina, rested, hitting the ball better, always a great cash game play. Really, you can use him in any format. I think that the Cards are in a decent spot against DeGrom tonight. John Jaso should be in that Oakland lineup, which I don't see is out as of yet, but he could be batting, as high as number 2 tonight. On base percentage versus righties is insane. He's in a good spot, I think, too. And don't even mind Miguel Montero, another expensive guy, but more of a GPP play for me tonight, Boggs. But he's hit Peralta well. You never know which Willie Peralta you're going to get. When Peralta's on, he's outstanding. He's got great stuff. When he's off, though, obviously he hangs the ball a little bit and becomes a little homer-prone and chase field. It scares me a little bit. So I think Montero's in a good spot. And 2 other guys that are moderately priced I'll throw out there, A.J. Pierzynski and Sal Perez, I'm also considering tonight.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on most of that. On our sponsor, Draft Street, looking at the prices, there's not really anyone that's going to break the bank. Probably my top price play is going to be Miguel Montero. He's got a very moderate price over there as opposed to some other sites. He's been hitting right-handed pitching all season long. He goes back home to the hitter-friendly Chase Field where he likes to do a lot of damage. I'm with you that Peralta can show up at times, but I think there's going to be a lot of runs scored in that game, and if that's the case, then Montero is probably going to be involved in it. So I'm liking Montero for his price. I do have Lucroy as my number 2 option. He's very pricey. He also might not start. I believe he started the last 6 games in a row, so that lineup isn't out yet, I don't believe. Double check that. But if he's in, and if you got the salary, Lucroy loves hitting at Chase Field. I mean, this guy absolutely, for whatever reason, no, it's a great place to hit, but he sees the ball well there. And you factor in McCarthy, who, he's not an easy pitcher to hit, but if he's not locating that sinker of his, it can be a long night for him. So like I said, I'm liking a lot of runs in this game, liking both catchers from it. And then in a GPP, my GPP play tonight, don't sleep on this guy, Evan Gattis. I know I mentioned I'm on Hamels, but if you're not, for whatever reason, Gattis' price on our sponsor Draft Street has come down based on the matchup, tough matchup. But he's been crushing left-handers all season long. He's riding a 16-game hitting streak. 15 home runs, the most, I believe, of any catcher. And while Victor Martinez is not listed as a catcher on our sponsor Draft Street, I think that Gaddis has got to be considered in your GPPs, especially if you're not on Hamels, because if there's one guy that is riding hot, hits lefties, hits them well at home, it's Evan Gaddis. So I'm really liking what he's been doing. I said it, been saying it for a while now that I'm a believer in him, and you can expect him to continue his hot-hitting ways if Hamels isn't on tonight. Going down for value, I'm with you on Yadier Molina. Also liking Kurt Suzuki a little bit here. He seemingly hit well in his career at Fenway Park against a hittable pitcher in Ruby De La Rosa. He's got a nice, where is it here? Suzuki. $4,300 price tag. And then going down, if you need to punt the position, there's not a whole lot to love. If you're not on Hamel, you do have Jeff Mathis. You've also got Alex Avila against the lefty. It's pretty much slim pickings down there at the bottom, even though there are a few guys that you can punt at minimum price. Does any of John Baker, Jeff Mathis, Alex Avila, or Caleb Joseph do it for you tonight, Pepsi, if you're looking to punt?
I mean, not really. I mean, when you get a price like 4.7 at Yadier Molina, I mean, that's an awful good price to sneak up to for him. I mean, especially in a cash game, it's hard to beat that. I don't hate Avila. I mentioned him on the show the other day. The guy's batting like whatever he was, $190 or something, but his on-base percentage is like .337. This guy walks like he should be in Oakland Athletics. So I think he's always in play, even as a punt catcher, just because he's got some pop. He will take a walk. He doesn't go minus too often. Don't love the matchup versus Vargas, but he's okay against lefties. So if you had to go complete punt and catcher, I would go Avila over those guys. But I think that you and a guy like Yadier Molina at that price, I would try to find a way at 4.7 and in Fando, for example, 2.8, him and Jay. So those guys are pretty solid options at value plays. So I'd try to find a downgrade somewhere else to get one of those guys in, because the guys Boggs mentioned there are looking to go minus for you because it's just not good hitters, period.
Yeah, and one thing I do need to bring up on our sponsor Draft Street, you do get docked for Ks, so that's why Avila's price is down. He can draw a walk and kind of mitigate, a negative for McKay, but he's a high strikeout guy, so keep that in mind, guys. And then one more other guy I wanted to bring up, who I'm very, very certain will be starting. If you're not on Hyunjin Ryu at all, Michael McHenry will likely be starting at catcher for the Rockies in place of Rosario. They brought up McHenry when they brought up Matzik because they worked well together when they were in AAA. So McHenry at 39.40 could be a nice GPP option who will probably fly under the radar with a lot of people expecting Rosario and then pivoting last minute. So keep that in mind, guys. But either way, let's move on to first base. Who we like it?
I think I got Miguel Cabrera number one, believe it or not. I mean, he's crushed lefties throughout his career. I know this season he's not hitting lefties too well, but that's irrelevant. He's too much of a long track record there. Miggy's not going to be cheap, but I love him tonight. Your cash games for sure. He's hit Vargas fairly well. Brandon Moss, I believe, is going to be an awful popular play tonight, and I love him. This is a guy, obviously, me more so slightly in GPPs. We know his monster upside that he has. Even in that ballpark in Oakland, it doesn't seem to hold him. He's capable of a 2 or even a 3-run home run game. So love him tonight versus Colby Lewis. Those are by far my 2 top plays. David Ortiz is in a good spot, and his price is fairly moderate to high on a few sites. Big country, Matt Adams. 3 home runs in a row. His price hasn't jumped too much, especially in a site like FanDuel. It's still only $3,000. I like him there. Those are the 4 guys I'm mainly looking at. For GPPs, I could also see Chris Davis and Goldschmidt tonight. Bobs, you mentioned runs out there in Chase Field, which certainly makes sense to me. But I think the top 2 guys for me are Miggy 1 and Moss number 2.
Okay. Looking at our sponsor Draft Street, Miguel Cabrera is very expensive. We've obviously seen him higher in the past. If there's one guy, probably there's a couple outfielders that I like tonight, but at first base, if there's one guy that I really like tonight, it's Miguel Cabrera. I mentioned about Verlander. Miguel Cabrera is kind of the same way. Obviously consistent, can hit anyone, but he's a big game type of guy. He likes to get those juices flowing, and I'm telling you, this is a big game. It may not seem that way, not even halfway through the season, but this is going to be a pivotal series for both of these teams. and I'm really liking Detroit in this one. So I love Miguel Cabrera. He's my top option. But over on our sponsor Draft Street, you got Paul Goldschmidt, who's $2,000 less than Miguel Cabrera. I've got him as my number 2 option based on price. I do like Moss as well, but I like Goldie's coming in back-to-back games with a home run, hitting at home where he loves to hit. He can hit righties as well as lefties against a hittable pitcher in Peralta. Whereas Moss he can definitely has the power to get it out of there in Oakland. But I'm liking the ballpark factor as my deciding factor between Goldschmidt and Moss tonight. Going down from there, I'm with you. I'm all over Matt Adams. He's got a very moderate price still, pretty much throughout the industry. Continue to ride him as he's been hot since coming back from injury. And going down for value, you got 3 guys kind of in the same price range on our sponsored Draft Street. You got Garrett Jones, who's only $49.50. Freddie Freeman, $49.60, and Joe Mauer at $46.50. Freeman is going to be a contrarian play. I'm a little off of him because of the matchup against Hamels. I know Freeman can hit lefties, and he had a pretty good approach last night against Hector Santiago. I would lean Jones in your GPPs, and if you're looking for a very cheap, cash game option, I think Mauer's that guy for me tonight. I have seen a few people, kind of think that Mauer sucks, this and that. I've seen it on the chat, whatever. It is what it is, but I'm telling you right now that Joe Mauer does not suck. This guy's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer when it's all said and done. I don't know if he's kind of dealing with some kind of lingering injury or perhaps he's just not seeing the ball well, but he's going to get it going sooner rather than later. 260 average will not be that way at the end of the season for Joe Mauer. So jump on him at $46.50 if you're looking for a cheap cash game option or just another utility option. I'm liking him a bit, and he loves hitting in Fenway Park. He's got some pretty gaudy numbers out there. So anyone else you want to bring up? Thoughts on some of those cheap guys?
Yeah, I like the Mauer pick. This guy, just a pure hitter. He's going to get his doubles off that wall. You mentioned he likes hitting off Fenway Park. It's because it was left field so well off that monster there. So I think he's your best value guy down there. I would still bump up to the 5.5 and pay up for Matt Adams. I mean, just like the Molina theory, it's just for an extra little bit of money, you're getting a much better hitter in a much better situation. So I try to find a downgrade somewhere else to go there. But, I think tonight's a night you do pay up. I mean, if you can afford Miggy, I love him, like you said there. But it's hard to pass on Adams with that kind of value.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Matt Adams is my top, value option. But if you need that salary relief, Mauer's a guy that I would definitely pivot to because he's a guy that rarely burns you, especially in your cash games. And at that price, he's just too cheap for me. But all right, let's move on to second base. Who are we liking at the keystone position?
Well, I'm all over Ian Kinsler. I like these Tigers bats. The right-handed bats, obviously, against Vargas tonight. He is my number 1 play tonight. I think that Ben Zobrist is in a good spot today. I'm not a huge Zobrist fan. I prefer him even from the left side of the plate, but he's hitting well right now, and he's had really good success BVP-wise versus Chen. So I think he gets a nomination there. Pedroia at home is always in play, especially against a bad pitcher, even though he's not a lefty. Scooter Gennett is in a good spot facing a righty, and he's fairly moderately priced still. So I like him tonight. And one more, too, was Howie Kendrick. I mean, this guy, I'm a big Howie Kendrick fan. I know he's slumping terribly. This guy is too good of a hitter to be slumping this bad. His price has come way down. I just think you got to mention him in some value plays. I mean, if you're going to load up and stack a team like Oakland or Detroit tonight, or the Dodgers even, they're expensive. And if you're going to go with the Hamels or Toronto, you need some value places. And I think at some point Kendrick's got to break out with a couple hits here. So I love his value tonight. Obviously, you Boggs see Kendrick hit all the time as an Angels fan. What's going on with this guy? You like him as a value play tonight?
Well, it's a timing issue. That's all it really is for me. That I've been able to notice. I've been saying it. Every time I do recommend Kendrick, that you'll know how his night's going to go after the first at bat. If his approach is to hit the ball the other way, he's sitting on some of those off-speed pitches, not tempted to roll over on inside pitches or outside pitches. grounding into double plays, then you know Kendrick's got the right approach. He hit the ball hard a few times over the series in Atlanta. I know he's struggling big time, but his price has come down as a result. I'm not in favor of playing him on our sponsored Draft Street, where his price is just over 5K. But over on FanDuel, where I believe he's only 2,400, definitely makes for a nice GPP punt option for me. So I'm going to kind of take the wait and see approach. I wouldn't be inclined to pay up for him over on our sponsored Draft Street. But it's only a matter before he starts to turn things around as well. Going to who I like, mostly a price play. Not the greatest matchup, obviously, but I've got Utley as my top option tonight. This guy is pretty much matchup proof. If you're not happy about playing Chase Utley at 5,700, albeit against a tough right-hander who does struggle more against lefties than righties, then when are you going to play Chase Utley? I mean, at 5,780, it doesn't get much better than that. I can see the argument for not playing him over a guy like Kinsler on a site like FanDuel, where they're the same price. But Utley's my top option on Draft Street tonight. I do have Kinsler as a close second, but to save an extra $2,500, a little less than that, I'm going to go with Utley, especially if I'm not on Tehran. After that, two guys that I'm kind of torn up on, and they've got a pretty much the same price industry-wide, are Cano and Kipnis. Obviously, Cano, he's got the pedigree, but Kipnis is kind of a sneaky option for me tonight. I don't think a lot of people are going to be willing to pay up, close to 7K for him. But this guy can hit a home run. He can steal a bag. He's starting to swing the bat better since coming off a DL. And, unfortunately, I'm not on my boy Weaver tonight. So I think Kipnis as a nice under-the-radar GPP play, that's probably where I would lean at around 67.75 on our sponsored Draft Street. Aside from that, I do think that both Scooter Gennett and Daniel Murphy are in play. And, quickly, talking about Murphy, one guy we didn't bring up in starting pitching is Carlos Martinez for the Cardinals. I don't believe he's even listed available on our sponsored Draft Street, but be cautious when starting that guy tonight, guys. He's probably pretty much got an 80 pitch count, and while he certainly can mow through this Mets lineup, I am not liking Martinez at all tonight, at least until they get him stretched out, if that's their intention. So Murphy, going against the many bullpen, it's going to be a bullpen game for the Cardinals. Murphy's in play. Jeanette's also in play for me. And then going down, if you are looking for some value, one guy that, like I mentioned at the top of the show, who eventually is going to be at the top of this Braves order, is Tommy La Stella. This is probably the only patient hitter not named Freddie Freeman in that lineup, and a guy that showed us last night that he can hit lefties as well as righties. He's a very patient hitter, batting .411, and like I said, it's only a matter of time before he gets up there. So jump on him if you're looking to save some money. Is there anyone else you want to bring up here, Pepsi?
I just want to comment on the Cano and Utley recommendations. Obviously, two of the best hitters in all of baseball, especially at second base. And you mentioned Utley's price being the primary reason why you're on him at 5.8, which is awful cheap for Draft Street. Tyson Ross owns lefties this year with a $1.95 batting average against, and Tehran's at a $1.81 batting average against versus lefties. So one of the reasons why I didn't mention I'm not big on them, like I said, I know you're just looking at the price, but for me, I would be fading them just because of that. I tend not to have guys go into my aces, even if the price is right for Utley tonight. He's 4 for 10 off from his career, but they're all singles. Tough guy to hit Tehran, so I would pass on even paying that price, and I'd bump it up to somebody like Kinsler, I love, although he's awful expensive there. But your thoughts on your players versus aces with those kind of numbers?
Well, I believe, I'm looking it up now, that Tehran, obviously he does have a large enough sample size for this year, but I believe I'm mainly basing it off last year.
Right. Yeah, he did have some struggles versus lefties last year. Yeah, I can bring that up for you here. It's last year 289 lefties for him.
Okay, yeah. So I could be wrong about that, but either way, Utley's a guy that I'm really never afraid to take against anyone. I do like the price, and if I'm not on Tehran, he's someone in a GPP that I'm going to be looking towards because no one's going to have him.
Sure.
And he does have the upside. So it's a tough one. I was wrong about that. I apologize. Tehran has been just as effective against left-handed bats. So I'm admitting I'm wrong there, but either way, that doesn't really get me off of Utley that much. I know,
especially that price, like you said. Primarily, it's because of price, and you're right on draft street. It's hard to beat 5.8 for a star at second base.
yeah. All right. Well, if there's anyone else you want to bring up,
No, we're good.
Let's move on to third base.
Yeah, tight for time, unfortunately, due to those hang-ups. I'll run through it real quick. Third base is not my favorite position tonight, to be honest. Even for cash games, I'm having trouble really loving somebody. I think Matt Carpenter is probably going to be my safest bet. Facing DeGrom, he's struggled recently with lefties, has his minor league career as well. So I think Carpenter's in a good spot. Evan Longoria's in a good spot. Not a great BVP versus Chen, but still he masters left-handed pitching, and I think he's also in a good spot tonight. And if you're looking at GPP-wise, I think that Donaldson, even though he's ice cold, here's a guy that nobody's going to be on. He can smash righties. Going to hit in the middle of that Oakland lineup. I think they're going to score off of Kobe Lewis, and he's going to be awful sneaky. Now, he's still not expensive, even though he's like 2 for his last 40, which is just awful to hear that, 2 for 40. But I think he's awful sneaky tonight. I'm going to find a way to get him in to one of my Oakland stacks tonight, just in case he goes off. I'm sure he'll be highly under-owned. Beltre, of course, in a good spot versus Pomeranz, although I don't love the matchup, and Beltre hits right-handed pitching a little better. Again, another guy that's great in GPPs, and I don't know, third's pretty weak tonight. What do you think about a guy like Aramis Ramirez, a pretty motley price there, Bucks?
I do. I like Aramis Ramirez. I've got him as my number 3 option on our sponsored draft street. In a very good hitting situation, he should have plenty of base runners on base, which are RBI opportunities. I'm with you on Longoria. It's kind of tough. I like Chisenhall though. His price skyrocketed when he had a few monster games in a row. He's facing my boy Jared Weaver, who if the top 2 guys in that order get on base are likely going to be taken off, and Bourne and Cabrera. So I'm liking guys to be in scoring position all night long if they're not getting on base. I think that Chisenhall, people may not be inclined to pay up for him, but similar to Kempness, is a guy that has the upside he's shown, and he's batting .371, so it's hard to kind of ignore that. Don't hate Beltre either. Very interested on your Donaldson pick. I think that might be an interesting strategy tonight because he's shown up until his massive slump that he could hit right-handed pitching. Not quite as good as lefties, but still put together some monster games. So that's going to be an interesting one to note, and especially the fact that he's the most expensive third baseman on the board tonight. No one's going to be on him over on our sponsor draft street. So, but going down from there, I do like Casey McGee, Carlos Santana, and Brock Holt as kind of mid-tier range guys. I'd probably lean with Brock Holt. He's got the matchup. He's been doing it all. I've been a big fan of this kid, especially his ability to hit with runners in scoring position, which is one of the main reasons why he has so many RBIs and 15 RBIs, and I don't even know how many games he's played. Probably under 20 or so. So leading off for the Red Sox, I'm liking them to hit Correa hard tonight, and Brock Holt as the table setter at 51.50 is a very attractive price. Going down and looking for some value, I'm liking Castellanos for the Tigers, a guy that's been hitting lefties, that's been hitting well of late. Profiles as a guy that can hit lefties, although his numbers aren't quite as good, I don't believe. And Chris Johnson, if you're not on Cole Hamels, is still all the way down there. He's turned things around. But one guy I want to bring up to you, I know we're running out of time. David Wright is $3,700. He's around guys like Chris Johnson, David Freese, and Mike Olt. Would you take a risk on him in a GPP?
Absolutely. I was going to mention Wright in his price. Absolutely a steal at this price. I realize he's not producing a lot right now, but Carlos Martinez has good stuff. We mentioned he's a bullpen arm, and he might want to last 4 innings. I mean, then you're in the Cards bullpen. So at that price, Wright's a steal. I think you've got to go there for the most part. And in your cash games, I think it's pretty safe there with third base not being real strong and very expensive to pay up for the big boys. So, and I also like Castellanos as well. You mentioned him. His price is solid. But, I mean, look at that. Castellanos is 4.4, and Wright batting third in the middle of the lineup is 3.7. How do you pass in your cash games on David Wright and Draft Street?
Yeah, I mean it's going to be tough because he hasn't been he's been disappointing a lot of people similar to Longoria, but he's a guy that another one of these guys he will turn it around. It's David Wright. You guys should just remember that. I think he's a great option in cash games or GPPs. And then like I said, it's going to be a bullpen game, so who knows what could happen in this one. Moving on here to shortstop. Who do we like?
Yeah, shortstop's fairly weak tonight as well, I think. Not really loving Tulo or Hanley tonight. They're too expensive. Don't love the match. I think Henley's at a pretty good spot, but he's just been so inconsistent lately, and you always wonder about the injury with him. I actually like two guys in the middle of the price, middle tier kind of guys, like Starlin Castro tonight, hitting the ball really well. Stole a base yesterday, too. We know he's got some wheels there to steal base, even though he's only got two on the season. So I like Castro for value. I think Jed Lowry's in a good spot. The Oakland lineup is now he's batting sixth, so he's going to get some RBI opportunities tonight for sure. Those are two guys that I really like, and I'm getting most of my lineups just because of their value and their pricing. Bogarts is obviously in a good spot where he's still available on shortstop. His price is fairly expensive, though, on some sites, so I tend to lean down to Lowry or Castro, but not really a guy that really stands out as a must-have for me tonight like usual at shortstop box.
Yeah, it's a difficult night for shortstops because you do have Tulo and Hanley going at each one another. Both have been dealing with some nagging injuries. That concerns me a bit, along with their prices hitting in Dodger Stadium in a game that I think is actually going to be very low scoring. So I'm kind of off of them a bit. I'd be an idiot to say I wouldn't recommend them because they're, both have the most potential. But kind of going down from there, I think Asdrubal Cabrera's in a decent spot. Same with Xander Bogaerts. Two guys that have some pop, can occasionally steal a base, and have been hitting well of late. I know Bogaerts was struggling a bit, but he kind of turned things around a bit, and he's up there batting second again, I believe. But going down, if you're looking for some value, you got Yunel Escobar, who is batting second tonight. He's just over 30 or just around $3,700. He'd probably be my top punt option. Everth Cabrera, always a dangerous pick. He's minimum price, but hitting at the top of the order, but definitely a guy that can strike out. I think it benefits him a little bit better that Chris Young is a hittable pitcher, very slow to the plate. So I think if there's ever an opportunity to jump on Cabrera and not have him burn you, it's tonight. But buyer beware because or bargain shopper beware because he definitely can rack up those Ks. Anyone else you want to bring up here as we're running out of time?
No, we'll move on to outfield here.
Yeah, let's talk about outfield where there's a lot to choose from. Who do you like?
I like the Tiger bats. They're fairly cheap too. Hunter and Jackson, value-wise, I think they're in play tonight. Love the Dodger bats as well. Kemp, Puig, Van Slyke. Puig might be my top play of the night. He just has that huge upside. I don't think Matzek's going to pitch as well again. The kid is a prospect. He's got good stuff. I just can't see him going out there and dominating this team, even though the Dodgers have struggled versus lefties. So I think they're in play. I like Matt Halliday tonight. He's in a good spot. Price is pretty moderate across the industry there. And the A's bats are my biggest thing, I'd say. Cespedes and Crisp are two guys that I love tonight for both cash games and GPPs. And John Jay batting the two spot. Real good price on him. Gerardo Parra's in a good spot tonight. And Daniel Nava if you're looking for value.
Yep, I'm with you on most of those guys. Not very high on Puig, and I'll disagree with you about Matzek a little bit. I gotta say, I was confused. I got this kid mixed up with Tyler Matthews, who's on Baltimore. I thought that was that kid out of USD, but Tyler Matzek, out of Valley Christian. I actually played against him in a winter ball league one night. He drilled me in the arm, and my entire arm went numb. So that's my little story about.
You didn't charge him after this?
I can never say I jacked off any of these great guys because I haven't. Phil Hughes, Tyler Boxberg, those guys struck me out. Matzek hits me, my arm goes numb for the whole night. But he's. I totally forgot about this kid. He's a little bit younger than me, but he impressed me in that first start, and the Dodgers haven't been swinging the bat well. He's from the area. He's going to have all his friends and family out there. No, that doesn't mean too much, and it can actually work negatively sometimes. But don't be surprised if he can at least pitch a halfway decent game. I don't think he's going to come out and have a similar performance that he did in his last start, especially with the dangerous bats that in the Dodger lineup. But the Dodgers are just kind of a mess right now. So I've got Trout as my top option, and my gut play of the night is Ryan Braun. For whatever reason, he likes to go on these road trips. The first game of the series, I remember San Diego a couple years back. He just had that 3 home run monster game. Tonight, he's a guy that I like when he takes guys that throw low sinkers because he loves hitting the ball low in the zone. It's more of a gut play. His price is pretty moderate on our sponsor Draft Street. I'm going to have a ton of exposure to Braun. It's just more of a gut feeling than anything, like I said. On our sponsor Draft Street, Michael Brantley is a great play, as always. Guy rarely strikes out, hittable pitcher, and he can rack up a couple steals against Jared Weaver. And I do like Puig a bit, but I would be, like I said, I'm not going to be loading up on all these Dodger bats, especially in your cash game. One guy I want to bring up at a very moderate price, who's up in there in my top plays, is Seth Smith. Chris Young gets away by throwing these high fastballs in the zone. He throws it, looks like it's coming from the sky because he's about 6'10", but I read somewhere today, I looked it up yesterday, Seth Smith is a guy that loves hitting the high fastball, and his OPS on fastballs high in the zone is well over 1,500 this year.
Wow.
So Seth Smith, at a very moderate price across the industry, is one guy that I'm going to have in a ton of my lineups, similar to Braun, who's likely to fly under the radar based on his team and the ballpark. Also like Holiday, Calhoun, Bourne, and Van Slyke at moderate prices on Draft Street. I know we're running out of time here, guys. That's why I'm kind of rushing. But Holiday, Calhoun, Bourne, and Van Slyke. And then some cheap options that I like. Ibanez, Andy Chavez, and Venable if they're in the lineup if you need to punt. Obviously, those guys are punt plays. Their prices are that low for a reason. But that's who I've got as my punt plays. Did I miss anyone?
Ibanez and Chavez both in the lineup. I assume Venable will be as well, and I like Venable. Your Puig not being on him, is that more because you've got to pay through the moon to get him, or are you off him regardless of price?
It's more of him dealing with that hip injury. You have to pay a premium price for him. Against the lefty, he's likely not going to steal and hitting in Dodger Stadium. I mean, he can hit the ball where he can hit anywhere. But I've just kind of been cooling off of him of late, just waiting for him to get a little bit healthy. Obviously, you can jump on him while his price is still high and maybe gain an edge in a GPP. But either way, it's a situation where I think Matzek can come out and pitch a decent game. I'm not really liking Puig. If he's leading off or batting second, I don't really know who's going to be on base in front of him. So there's always a concern about that. And it's a situation where I don't really feel like paying up for him until I know he's healthy.
Yeah, fair enough. Batting only 207 in the last 7 days, so perhaps that hip injury is bothering him and he's trying to play through it.
Yeah, definitely. Is there anyone else you want to talk about here?
No, I think we're running out of time there, unfortunately. We've got a lot of good guys in there, and I just want to mention again that those Detroit and Oakland bats are my main guys, and looking at John Jay and Nava for value, it's tough to beat them where they're hitting the lines tonight.
Yep, definitely. I'm with you on those guys, especially over on FanDuel where Nava and Jay are pretty much rock bottom.
Oh, yeah.
So definitely get those guys in your lineups tonight. Again, we apologize for those little technical difficulties at the beginning of the show. Sorry we didn't get to any of your questions. We'll stick around and chat here for a couple minutes before we get to our lineups. But thank you guys for tuning in. And Pepsi, you want to sign off with anything?
Just want to mention the DSBS BC tonight, 420 qualifier. It's expensive, but your odds are much better. So don't forget that, guys, and jump on it and win a big prize maybe tonight.
All right. Good luck, grinders.